Salofalava, this is Pacific Waves from RNZ Pacific. I'm Susana Suisuki. Coming up, conflict in West Papua intensifies. Also,
the Pacific Island Forum countries need to continue to support New Caledonia to become full sovereign.
New Caledonia's political future remains unclear. And
for a month, it's almost like 3,000. It depends how many kava we process.
Tonga kava growers seek solutions. Earlier this week, the World Health Organization declared a polio outbreak in Papua New Guinea, calling for an immediate vaccination campaign. The BBC reported the virus had been found in 2 healthy children during a routine screening in Lae. The country's health minister says the situation is serious but manageable. I spoke to Dr. Jayadontis, the Professor of International Health at the School of Population Health at Curtin University in Perth, Australia. I began by asking her how many cases of polio in PNG are there so far.
So as of last week, there were 2 cases. I haven't seen if the numbers have increased in the last few days, but there were 2 cases detected in 2 children under the age of 5 years old.
Where did the virus originate from?
So it's the polio virus. So it's the polio virus that's circulating in the community, and the experts felt at that time that it was something that had come over from Indonesia. So there were cases of polio circulating, and that could have moved on to PNG. That's what they felt.
Are there different types or strains of polio, considering that the virus still managed to infect 2 healthy children?
There are different strains. There's type 1 and type 2 of the polio virus, and the recent resurgence in PNG was the type 2, and it was detected in 2 asymptomatic children. So what happens is with the polio virus, normally you are not able to see the symptoms until there's a lag. So basically, one was not sure whether the children were vaccinated or not, but they were definitely asymptomatic. And it's under immunized populations. So basically, childhood vaccination in PNG sits at about 50%. That is extremely low. It should sit at anywhere between 85 to 94% for it to have herd immunity with those who are unvaccinated. So there is low coverage, and there could be regional differences.
Well, then why do you think health authorities in PNG weren't able to act quicker when they knew that the polio vaccination coverage was sitting at 50%?
So basically, what happens in populations that have low health literacy, there is low uptake of vaccination in many of the resource-poor countries or developing countries, PNG being one. And many a times, parents may not have access. They might be far away from health centers. There might not be mobile vaccination units going to the villages. There could be misinformation for religious reasons. Sometimes parents don't vaccinate their children. Because it's children under 5, childhood vaccination is dependent on parents allowing their children to be vaccinated. When that does not happen, then it's a problem. So there needs to be a really good immunization program in the country. One good thing about polio was it had been eradicated in most of the world, except for 2 countries, certain parts of Pakistan and Afghanistan, that historically had conflict. And because of that, it was difficult to vaccinate children in those areas. But in other parts, there was no polio, but there's been a resurgence of polio since the end of COVID or post-COVID.
And which areas in PNG do you know of as considered high risk?
So in PNG, what I would say is you have PNG and you have different rates of transmission. There are certain areas that have only 8 to 10% coverage. And it's really important that the government looks at those areas where the coverage is very low. Now, they have wastewater surveillance that identified these polio cases, and that wastewater surveillance was in Leh and Port Moresby. But I don't know about the other highlands. You know, there are the highlands, there are the other remote areas of PNG. So it's really important from a surveillance perspective for the Department of Health in PNG to know the areas where those cases where there's very low immunization.
Because you've mentioned that the virus had likely come from Indonesia, do you think that the government should be monitoring the border between Indonesia and Papua New Guinea?
Actually, basically, in cases like this, it's much, much easier to talk to the countries, the neighboring countries. So I know that Australia and New Zealand are already talking to PNG. I know that Indonesia is aware of this issue. So there's no cause for panic, but it's really important to look at your border areas, to look at people mobility, and in many ways to look at a comprehensive nationwide vaccination round that targets all the children, and you need to have intensified surveillance. And so for surveillance, you actually need the public health community to be vigilant. You need teams on the ground looking at wastewater surveillance, looking and talking to the community. And you also need community education and engagement. And often that is done through local elders. We know in all of these countries and population, local elders who are trusted, who act as gatekeepers, can be used in order to have the right messaging in the community.
Hey, thank you so much, Dr. Jai, for your time. One last question. What are some of the symptoms that people need to look out for when it comes to polio?
So with polio, first, it's like a flu-like illness, and that's common. There's fever, fatigue, muscle pain, sometimes a sore throat. But if that continues, then you think if it continues for more than 2-3 weeks, then there could be something. But when that leads to muscle pain and stiffness, then those are the signs that we need some testing done. If you have other complications that may have arisen. And that's what I think the surveillance also needs to look at. The surveillance needs to look at in the community if those have got certain symptoms of paralysis among the population, especially children. So they need to look at that aspect. And because polio, the polio vaccine is oral polio vaccine, so it's easy to give to children. It doesn't require an injection, but it's important to note the symptoms, the initial symptoms. But when there's muscle pain or muscle stiffness or partial paralysis or something like that parents note in their children, then they need to be vigilant to that. But one thing they need to know is that polio is preventable. Communities need to be committed, and the government needs to be committed. And PNG's response has been swift now, but it's been reactive. More than reactive, you really need vaccination for all childhood illnesses to be intensified for all children under the age of 5 to see that their vaccination is up to date. You know, in some places, if there's 10% vaccination, another 50%, 70%, you are going to get outbreaks of infectious diseases, and this is problematic for the community, for the children, and for neighboring countries too.
The president of the United Liberation Movement for West Papua says recent violence in the region reminds him of his childhood. The organisation claims Indonesia has carried out airstrikes on 7 villages in Punjab Regency, causing people to flee their ancestral lands. Benny Wenda told Caleb Fotheringham the conflict is intensifying.
Indonesia used drone and helicopter and dropped the bomb, and this bomb is not like this year, but it's quite some time. And the bombing in like Oxybil, and particularly in Oxybil, and also Interjaya, Puncak Jaya is almost a while now. But this one, massive airstrike by Indonesia carry out, and now all the women and children mostly are scattered and run away and left the villages, and Indonesia occupied most of the villages. So this is like bringing me memory, my childhood. I was hiding with almost 7 years in the bush from 1977 and 82. It's exactly, and when I see that women carry their bag and the children run away, is hard cry. Just bring me memory.
So why do you think Indonesia is increasing its military presence?
Indonesian military presence in West Papua is just interest of our resources. And also, they know the West Papua is a subhuman, and they look at us as primitive, and they look at us as subhuman. Partly, we are being different, being Melanesian, being Pacifica, and being Christian, being different. And they want entire population to wipe out, and they bring the settlers in West Papua and take the land, grab the land, and then fill it the gap. And that's what the intention are.
The West Papua National Liberation Army, is that growing in size as well in response to Indonesia's military increasing its attacks?
Yeah, I'm not denying, but I call this is home guard, and because there's no way to go, and even bow and arrow and fighting with the modern weapons and drone, and this is drone are particularly designed for the wipe out entire population, and they don't know the drone watching them on top of their head, and drone bombing. And you cannot win war with the modern weapons and drone and with the bow and arrow and right gun, here, there. So it's just trying to defend themselves. There's no way to go. And that's why the world been ignored, and why the Pacific leader been ignored, and why Melanesian been ignored us, because we are not safe with Indonesia. And that's why we're pushing Melanesian leader to accept our application for full membership, and the Pacific Island Forum need to consistent to push the Indonesian government to allow United Nations visit.
1 year after deadly violence broke out in New Caledonia, there's still no solution in sight for the French territory's political future. The unrest was triggered by a proposed change to the electoral roll, which pro-independence groups feared would dilute their political power. Lydia Lewis reports.
This time last year, burning cars and debris blocked main roads amid violence and looting in Nouméa and other towns throughout New Caledonia.
The current situation is catastrophic. During the night, many shops and cars have been burned.
Journalist Coralie Cochon says the memories are still raw.
It was very shocking. It was the first time that we have to face so much violence. I don't know the word in English. In French, it's sidération. You have this feeling, you can't believe what you're seeing. It was like the country was in war. Everybody was burning.
14 people died in the riots. 12 were Indigenous Kanaks. New Caledonia's new collegial government president, Alsi Ponga, says people are still struggling.
We have big issues in front of us. Economic issues, social issues, finance issues. If we don't have any help from France, I think that we will arrive in the very, very bad situation.
The French government has tabled the first real proposal on a path forward, full sovereignty in partnership with France, a move the new president opposes. Journalist Nick McClellan has been following New Caledonia politics for around 4 decades.
The Loyalists basically want to get rid of Manuel Valls, the overseas minister, they think he's been too, committed to decolonisation. It's just madness, though, that if Macron turns around to say, well, let's just go, and change the rules again like we tried to do last year, it'll explode again. It's just crazy.
Advisor to the previous government, Charles Ware, says the question of New Caledonia's political future has regional implications.
The Pacific Island Forum countries need to continue to support New Caledonia to become full sovereign. The stability of New Caledonia will also conduct the stability for the region.
Pacific Islands Forum leaders have visited New Caledonia and are expected to hand over their report to the rest of the leaders at their annual meeting in Solomon Islands in September. Some have already stated their views. Former Vanuatu Prime Minister Shalo Salwai, for one.
We are also, for a long time, Vanuatu support independence of Melanesian countries. We're not going to interfere in the politics in France, but politically and morally we support the independence of New Caledonia.
Tuvalu MP Simon Kofe.
My position is for independence. We need to continue to support the decolonisation of the Pacific.
And Fiji's Prime Minister Sitiveni Rabuka, who spoke with RNZ Pacific the day before heading to New Caledonia as part of the Pacific Islands Forum mission.
Don't slap the hand that has fed you. Have a good disassociation arrangement. When you become independent, make sure you part as friends.
But President Bonga says New Caledonia's politics is not the Pacific's problem, and meddling is not welcome.
I do not have objective to come and criticize the politics in New Zealand. Please don't criticize what happened in New Caledonia between the Caledonian people and France.
He favours a federalist solution that would see New Caledonia become like a state of France. Mostly, he wants a peaceful resolution.
For me, I have to bring to the region to try and help to create safe area in Pacific and not create has 24 trouble situation in New Caledonia with civil war.
Louis Marple was president a year ago and invited Pacific Islands Forum leaders to his country.
We opened a door to our friends of the Pacific, and the door cannot be closed. We need to keep it open.
In a rare interview with RNZ Pacific, he encourages unity.
The events of 2024 have really spoiled our spirit. We have to be proud to be New Caledonian and proud of our country. There is a need to take charge personally, but also taking charge collectively.
A November election looms, while New Caledonia's political future remains at an impasse.
The chairman of Tonga's Kava National Committee, Fe'iloki Tau Devi, says that kava growers need more facilities and resources to enhance kava production in Tonga, as extreme weather and climate change are hindering its growth. Melevere, who owns Ariana Trading, said there is a shortage as they try to meet the FDA requirements, but they're in need of a kava processing facility, which has been a struggle. Grace Fever-Ai was in Tonga and has more.
Tonga's wet season is typically from November to April, but rainfall in the kingdom has intensified in recent months, affecting temperature. The optimal temperature for kava is around 30 degrees Celsius, and it takes around 3 to 4 years for it to grow. Melevere of Ariana Trading says because there has been a lot of rain, they had to use a kava dehydration machine that has racked up an enormous power bill, and are looking at other cost-effective alternatives such as solar dryers.
For a month, it's almost like 3,000. It depends how many kava we process. So at the moment, we're still seeking for some donors or for some funds to assist us with a solar dryer.
Another struggle for Vera is having to meet the FDA standards to be able to export her products internationally, especially to the US, where Trump's tariffs has caused panic among kava farmers.
It's one of the key requirements of exporting to especially US market. We had to meet the FDA requirements, and one of the requirements we had to be HACCP certified. So we still are working on our kava processing facility at the moment.
Fe'iloki Tau Devi, the chairman of National Kava Committee, says all kava growers need equal attention and not just one who grows more.
I know we can do better. I know that our partners can also have more focus on it. These are all matters that we're trying to work on to make things happen. As a country, we need to look at the needs of this 10 to 15 plant kava grower, as well as the 15 to 20 acre kava grower.
Despite the challenges, there are increased discussions on protecting Tongan kava due to some individuals diluting it with other products. Mr. Devi says a draft bill will look at safeguarding kava and the use of its name to protect its integrity.
Once we define it as a Tongan word, then we will have the opportunity to then begin processes to protect the word kava.
As part of the Week of Agriculture and Forestry celebrations, Tonga is gearing up to host the first regional kava festival in 2 weeks' time.
That's Pacific Waves for today. For all episodes, head over to rnz.co.nz/Pacific. We're also on Spotify, Apple and iHeartRadio. From myself and the RNZ Pacific team, tō whā sui fua.